Hello, and welcome back to another great episode of hashtag Screw the W2. And my guest today, Chris, if he looks or sounds familiar, I've actually had him as a previous guest on my podcast, the Wealth and Freedom Nexus. We had discussed a number of literal cash machines. I will just leave it at that. I want you to obviously go in and check out my podcast, the Wealth and Freedom Nexus, Spotify, iTunes, whichever you prefer. And that was episode 62 that was released in December of 2022. But here, I wanted to welcome back Chris to my Screw the W2 show. Chris, thanks for coming back on.
Oh, appreciate it. I like the title. It's a little bit like the title of my book, a little offensive, right?
Yeah, I've been looking at kind of creating a logo, and I want to incorporate like a screw going through.
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't know, a corporate desk or something. I don't know. That's
Something.
another one of my laundry list items for the year. So,
Yeah.
but anyways, Chris, I know and again, I don't want to give out too much of my podcast. Again, that's episode 62 that Chris was on, but kind of going in a different direction. Can you take us back to what your previous W2 job was, and like what was a average day for you, as if you will?
Yeah. So I'll leave out company names, but people will be able to figure it out because my background is pretty clear. But so I was toward the end of my career, I worked for an aircraft manufacturing company, and
Okay.
I was the contracts portion of the sales team.
Okay.
And so we sold commercial airplanes all over the world, and my job was to, write and negotiate the contracts. And so, and I'll talk about, in good times, I was part of the selling team. We were doing these contracts, and finding win-win solutions to incredibly complex problems, and with billion-dollar deals, and flying all over the world for extended periods of time
Wow.
and doing that, and then maintaining those relationships with the customers until the time when the aircraft was done, which could be years depending on where the cycle was. If we had a lot of orders, then it could be 36 months before you could get a plane, or it could be 18 months. And then, on delivery day was always a good time, all that work, and the customer would show up with its pilots and inspectors, and I was there. And when the money hit the bank, what was due, I would sign over the title, and champagne would be drunk, and it was a lot of fun. So I got to see that whole thing from the very beginning of the discussions with the customers. What could the planes do for them, all the way through the transaction and to the final delivery. So that was the good part of the job. So,
Okay.
now the kind of the negative
Guessing there's a
thing.
flip side to this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a flip side, because we're talking about screwing the W-2, so we got to
Yeah.
get, and I'll make a little bit of disclaimer. There are in any career, you take a long period of time. I worked there for over 33 and a half years.
Oh, wow.
And so it was a long time deal for me, and everything goes in cycles. There's good times and bad times, and
Yep.
good people and better people, and not so good people. But the tough times were kind of the not so good and underqualified people in positions of leadership, that are in
Good old
every company.
nepotism.
Yeah, but in those, it's amazing how a handful of those people can just make life miserable. So all the
Mm.
external dealings with the customers and all that, I mean, with the most difficult situations, we always left on good terms. Nobody ever said, "Hey, don't ever send Chris back to our company again." That never happened. But then you had all this, lack of leadership and dysfunction inside the home office. And at some point in time, the scales tipped, and, the good times couldn't outweigh all that stuff
Mm.
anymore.
Okay.
And so that's kind of, in very generic terms. And I questioned myself, well, does some of that go after so many years? I just become less patient, or
Yep.
was it the same amount of crap the whole time, or did I just get less patient as I got older? I
Yeah.
don't really know what the right answer is, but there comes a time in everybody's career when they go, for whatever reason, I need to do something else. So that's kind of what my life was like. But and I was a W-2 guy forever. I didn't have,
Mhm.
none of my family were entrepreneurs or business people, or investors in any kind of serious way. So that's all I knew.
Okay.
And but anyway, it was a pretty good ride overall, I would say.
Okay. All right. And then with that, and obviously, there's the good and the bad, even the ugly with any job out there. But with that, what was your process to getting out? Was it just this day I'm done and then I got to figure out, okay, what do I do next? Or was it a process where I know I need to do something, you worked on that on the side for a year or whatever, and then you left?
So I'm going to answer that question. There were two kind of motivating factors that caused me to go, I need to do something else.
Okay.
And one of them was that, and this is part of the story that that I got divorced after 19 years and
Okay.
lost 55% of my assets and $1,000 a month in cash
Oof.
flow. And even though I had a good job,
Right.
I was like, if I'm gonna just not, there's a couple ways to solve this. Well, you either extend your working time because now you've
Yep.
just lost 55% of everything, or you find a way to build back faster. And
Right.
so my challenge was, how do I build that faster? So I knew I needed to invest differently and more smartly, and that's when alternative investments came along. And then the
Mhm.
second thing that motivated me when I was talking about some of the negative parts of being in the corporation is that I got demoted and put out to pasture for something that was not my fault. And
Ah.
it's just somebody had to be blamed for something that happened, and I was the main guy
We're
that got blamed for it. And
gonna blame
so,
Chris then, yeah.
yeah, so I got pushed out, and took a huge cut in pay. So the bad part about that was, the blow to your ego. You think you're doing a good job, and I would say probably I actually was, but I just got caught in a bad situation, and so you have kind of a blow to your ego, and then losing a significant amount of pay doesn't help either. But
Hmm.
then the good part of that was, okay, now I wasn't traveling international all the time. I wasn't working evenings and weekends, and I had a 9 to 5 job. So now I had all of this free time back that I could just, really focus my efforts on the alternative investing and building back what I had lost and exiting the company, at some kind of a reasonable amount of time. And
Okay.
so those were the two things that kind of tipped me over the edge.
Gotcha. No, it makes sense. Yeah, and everyone has our, individual stories, but yeah, I can't even imagine just, you know, maybe seemingly overnight losing half your net worth, and then you got to figure, well, I have to have 100% gain just to
Well,
get
yeah,
back to where I
and
was
then losing
before.
losing half of your income.
Right, exactly. So it's kind of a double whammy there.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So it was a big deal, not in a well, in a bad way, but then there was the silver lining that I
right.
had all this time. Now, what was I going to do with it? Was I going to sit around and with a bottle of Jim Beam,
Yeah,
or
or
was I going to? I
Netflix
did
and
some of
chill
that
and
too, but yeah, but
so all right. And then with that, what was obviously discussed about alternative investments. And again, I'll do one last selfish pitch for my podcast, episode 62, as far as what those alternative investments are. But when had this free time, started to, educate yourself, what was, or do you remember what your freedom day was when your last day or last paycheck from your W-2 was?
it was approximately December 21st, 2018.
2018. Okay, so we're coming up past 4 years now.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
all right. So
That was my
now
last. That was my last work day.
gotcha. Now you mentioned obviously there's good and bad with any job out there, and obviously the relationships and the camaraderie, the meetings with all your customers. But looking back, now we're past 4 years that you left your W-2. Have you had any, or do you have any regrets from leaving that behind?
Like I said, I don't have any regrets. I mean,
Okay.
there were some of the good aspects I missed. It was really a lot of fun negotiating those contracts and coming up with solutions to really complex problems. Win-win, and everybody walked away. Everybody
Hmm.
walked away, and nobody felt like a loser. Nobody got everything they wanted, but at the end, it was a amicable arrangement, and everybody went okay, and it was a good time. So that I missed that kind of challenge in the interaction, with customers all over the world, and and I do miss some of the international travel that was
Sure.
done better than coach class.
Yeah,
So
exactly. So, oh, the company's paying for it. Yes,
yeah,
I'll do first class. I'll have a bottle of wine, and so now on the flip side, Chris, I mean, I've talked with you and networked with you on LinkedIn. I can probably take some educated guesses on this, but on the flip side, since that December of 2018, what's been the best part of your journey being now an investor, an entrepreneur, and even a fellow educator with your book and resources?
Yeah, I say there are two things. My knowledge has just grown exponentially over
Mm,
that time, and uh, so that's been just amazing. When I think about, when you kind of start this journey, I mean, there's a whole lot of education that happens to go on, and every industry has its own language. There's
mhm.
terms in aviation, there's terms in finance, and I can remember the times when I was listening to something and I'd go, oh my god, I don't understand half of what they're talking about. Now,
Or half
I
as
understand.
lucky.
Yeah. So just exponential learning, and then all the really great friends and acquaintances I've made, over this time, that are kind of like-minded people. And
Right.
you know uh, and the truth is, that probably less than 10% of the population invests in alternatives. So
Yeah.
you don't actually, in your day-to-day life, you don't run across these people, right? So
No.
you don't go out of your way. So now that I'm kind of in this environment, it's really fun to be around people and have somebody I can call if I've
Mhm.
got a question, or I know somebody knows something about this thing that I'm having a problem with. There's a whole network of people that I could pull on. And when I travel around, I love road trips. When I travel around the country, I can always there's always somebody in a town that I know that I can call and say, hey, what are
Right.
you doing?
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting you mentioned I don't know what the official number is, but let's just say it's even 10% of the population invest in alternative assets. And there's a number of reasons for that. But it was interesting because just yesterday I was giving a presentation to some high school students, and
Oh,
one in
neat.
particular was actually a little bit more uh I want to say a little savvy, more investment minded,
Mm-hmm.
but you could tell she was still very programmed by society. It's like, well, the
Mm-hmm.
stock market is kind of risky, and it's been so volatile lately, and a lot of the high flyers, Meta or Google are having issues, and I'm just it kind of got to the point. It's like there's more than just the stock market to invest in. But
Right.
I think
Yeah.
as society, we've just been programmed. It's
Yeah.
stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, and an IRA or 401k.
I mean, it comes at you. I mean, your family, your friends, that's what
Yeah,
everybody's doing. If you come across somebody like you or me, that's an anomaly. And
yeah,
it's like when Galileo said the world was round, everybody said, you're crazy. We all know it's
yeah,
flat, right? That's how
exactly.
crazy you are when you start talking the way we talk.
No kidding. So now, Chris, your journeys obviously, all of our journeys are a little bit different, but for, if someone's in I don't want to say a dead end, but maybe just a job they don't feel fulfilled in, shall we say, and whether they've been there 3 years or 33 years like yourself, but for whatever reason, they just feel stuck. Maybe, well, I got a wife, a kid, mortgage to pay. I got this company pension. I've invested a lot into this. I can't, make that leap into entrepreneurship or investing or self-employment. What would be your, words of wisdom or advice to that person looking to jump ship, if you will, from their W-2 job?
Well, let's take an analogy. Let's just talk about health.
Okay.
And so let's talk about like physical health and then financial health, right?
Hmm.
So if you're not physically very healthy and you're looking down this road and you're going, oh my gosh, how am I going to get from here to there? Right, it's a huge thing. This could
Yeah.
take years. Well, I think there's power in movement, right? And in the physical sense, it really is physical movement. I mean, if you need to get healthier, you need to exercise more.
Yeah.
And another movement is that you need to eat healthier. And so that movement takes those forms. Now, if you're trying to improve your financial health, it's the same thing. I mean, you gotta make some movement. That
Mhm.
includes, reading the books, listening to the podcast, traveling to the seminars and the classes and meeting the people. So that it's just another form of movement, and
Mhm.
each little movement produces a little tiny bit of success and a little bit of self-confidence, which success builds upon success. And so I just find it, that the movement thing is very applicable whether
Yeah.
it's physical movement or mental movement, just you're going in that direction that you want to go to. And sometimes I find myself in a situation or a difficult spot. It's like, okay, I've got, I know what the solution to this is. I got to get up. I got to go to the gym. I got to take a walk and clear my
Right.
mind. Or I know that I'm going to have to tackle this one thing. So let me start in whatever way I think is possible to
Yeah.
scratch that surface and get movement. So you got to be moving.
Makes sense. No, and I always remember the on exact quote, but I think it was Robert Kiyosaki always said, no one learned to ride a bike by reading a book. You actually have to
That's
get
right.
on the bike and,
Yep.
like you said, move.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, all right.
And
Well,
everyone isn't going to be everyone isn't going to work. Some of them are not going to work. Some of them are going to be setbacks, and that's just
mhm.
you just keep chipping away at it.
Exactly. So, well, so yeah, wrap this up, Chris. And again, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to, share your story with my listeners as we're, heading into 2023. Is there any, new projects or new books you want to mention or anything you're excited about coming up in 2023?
No new books. I
Okay.
am one of my focuses is for this year is instead of being in the audience at these business conferences is to be on stage,
Oh,
and
okay.
so I'm working on that. And my audience is probably a different group than you and I talk to. And I say that kind of hedging my bets a little bit because, the
Hmm.
people that are, listening to your podcast and watch your YouTube channel, they've pretty much got there. But anyway, there may be some of that audience that isn't quite convinced yet. And so, or there may be the people that are still the conventional investors that, are still wary about this other type of investing if they even know about it. And I think the thing that I can bring is to convince people that what I call the 401k highway to mediocrity and the
Yep.
conventional investing wisdom is not going to get them where they want to be. And I've got some really interesting facts and data that I can show them the math and say, 90% of you are going to fail going
Hmm.
down this path. And here's why. And
Yeah.
I use the conventional financial advisor's own rules against them. And so let me
Hmm.
tell you why this doesn't work. Let's just
Right.
do the math. And I think a lot of light bulbs would go off. So anyway, I'm trying to get out and do that this year, and I'm just getting started. So
Okay. And otherwise, I believe, and I'll include in the show notes and a link. You have a blog, website, maybe a YouTube channel. I'm not sure, but it's the Prolific Investor, as I recall.
yeah, the prolificinvestor.net is
Okay,
the website where I do the articles, and I do have a YouTube channel with the same name and a social media with the same name, and
sure.
all of that stuff. You could just go to the prolificinvestor.net. That's the one-stop shop, and I'll do a cheap plug for my book, which is called "Get Off Your Ass and Manage Your Money: Why You Need Alternative Investments," and you can link to that from the prolificinvestor.net as well.
Perfect. No, sounds good. And yes, shameless plug on my end. I've read that book and definitely highlighted and have it on my recommended reading in my Amazon store as well, too.
Awesome,
So
appreciate that.
um you bet. So Chris, thanks again for taking the time, sharing your story, and best of luck to you in 2023.
Thanks a lot. You too, John. Thanks for having me on.